Hey everybody. Hope you guys are having a good night. I want to be sure that everybody can hear me and see me before we get started. So welcome to the first online live Q&A. And I'm just going to do a little, I want to make sure my technology is working here. So I don't see, doesn't look like it's working on the page. Let me just be sure I got this. Yes. Okay. So there might be a slight delay, but if people can tell me whether you see me on screen, then I'm going to then I'll know that you can see me and hear me. I'm just looking to see that everything is working properly. Yeah, the chat box is there. So if you want to just type something in the chat, just say hi or say yes, I can hear you. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that everything's okay, and we'll just get going. So welcome to our first chat, and I'm so glad that you're in this group with me. You guys have been amazing so far. I love the interactions in the Facebook group. And if you're not in the Facebook group, please come on out and join. I think it's a wonderful group of people here, and clearly a lot of support already. So the other thing I would love to know is how many people have tried out any of the recipes. And if you have, always feel free to put your feedback in the Facebook group, or just email me and let me know. So that would be great too. So the way it's going to work, generally each month we'll have a date set, and I think as we get our groove, the format may change and develop and grow as we go along. But for now, what I'm going to be doing is collecting questions from the Facebook group. And then we may ultimately have a specific theme where I might just talk about something. So pardon me, as I mentioned, I've been battling a cold. I'm going to be sipping as we go. We'll see how long my throat lasts. Right now, it's iffy. So I'll just talk until I can't talk anymore. Okay, so what I thought I would do is, if anyone is online live and you have questions for me, if you look below the video here, there's a Chatwing chat box, and there's a bar at the bottom where it says enter something, and you can just type into that and then press enter, and I will see your question. So if anything comes up as we're talking, please feel free to ask your questions there. But otherwise, I think what I'm going to do is just launch right in, and what I did is I recorded the questions from the Facebook group in the order that I found them, and I'll just go through them one at a time. So then you can use this as a reference source later on. Okay, so the first question was from Kaylin, and it was, is nutritional yeast good? Nutritional yeast, yay or nay? So that's an interesting question, because when it comes to yeasts, the theory is the reason you want to avoid them on an anti-candida diet is because the molecular structure of one yeast is very similar to another yeast, and so your body's going to recognize the nutritional yeast as yeast, and presumably if you've been fighting candida, it's your immune system that recognizes those cells and those molecules, and it's going to attack the nutritional yeast. It's going to see it as another allergen to attack, just the way it's been attacking the candida, or trying to attack the candida. So that's the theory that says you should not consume nutritional yeast, because your body is going to respond to it very much the same way that it responds to other yeast. And then you can have flare-up or reaction, inflammation. However, nutritional yeast is what they call a dead yeast, or it's not an activated yeast. So unlike, excuse me, sorry guys, unlike yeast that you would use, say, when you're baking bread, nutritional yeast doesn't grow, it doesn't bloom, it's not activated by sugar or anything. It's dead. So theoretically, it can't cause yeast to grow in the body. So my feeling is, certainly I wouldn't have it right at the beginning, but if you are on the diet for a while and you're starting to feel better, maybe you're in stage 2, you could try a little bit and see how you respond to it. And I have found with me, even though there are lots of things that make my symptoms flare up, nutritional yeast is not one of them. Excuse me. So I can have a little bit of it every now and again. And I think and I'm going to say this a lot tonight because I'm not a doctor, and certainly if you're asking, should I eat this or shouldn't I eat this, I can't tell you one way or the other, but I can say go with what your body tells you. And that's really, I think, in every situation, probably the best bet, at least in my opinion. So that's what I do. If I don't have a reaction to something, then I can have it in moderation, but you don't want to be eating it every day. I would say I have nutritional yeast maximum twice a month, and it's not usually 2 days in a row. So I don't make a point of having it, but I don't worry about it if I do have it. And that's what I would say. If you don't have a reaction, then that's the way that you can work with that. Okay. If there's anybody out there, it would be great if you just put a comment at the bottom of the chat box and said, yes, I can hear you, Ricki. Otherwise, I'm just assuming we are taping this, but it should be okay. So, okay, second question on the Facebook group was, is toothpaste a concern? And I'm not sure what you meant by that question. I'm assuming because toothpaste, most conventional toothpaste, the kind, or commercial toothpaste, I should say, has aspartame in it, or else it's going to have sucralose in it, and it's going to have fillers, and it's going to have soaping agents like lauryl sulfates. So yeah, that would be a concern to me. And I think compared to a lot of the holistic nutritionists that you see out there, because I'm not practicing with clients, or maybe that's not why, but I think I have a lot more of a moderate approach to this, because for me it's been really an evolution and a growing process. And so when I was in nutrition school and learning about all this stuff, it was just too overwhelming to change everything all at once. And so I would say anytime you can make changes that are helpful, that's a good thing. But don't feel like you have to go from standard American diet to, kale and chard every day kind of thing. It's okay as long as you're making progress. And I think as long as you're doing something that's helping your body daily, and you're moving in the right direction, and you're comfortable with the amount of change you make, that's great. So yes, I would say it's better if you can use a more natural toothpaste, or even make your own. But if it's overwhelming and you're making all other kinds of changes and you can't think about that right now, then wait a little while, and make sure you spit out your toothpaste and don't, try not to swallow it. I would have a problem with the fluoride, with the aspartame or the artificial sweeteners, and with the soaping agents in a commercial toothpaste. Those are all really bad for you. So I would be concerned about those, and I wouldn't want you to be consuming those. There are better options. There's a brand called Jason that I used for a very long time. There's one in Canada called Nature's Gate. That's really good. There's a new one out that I'm trying now called Earth Paste. So Earth and then paste, it's all one word, and it's actually made out of clay, and it's got some essential oil flavoring in it. And the thing is, for toothpaste, you could use baking soda and water, and it's really, apparently, the scrubbing action is what keeps your teeth clean and in shape. So even if you're not using a soapy toothpaste, you could still have really healthy teeth and not have to worry about cavities. So this Earth paste is brown, like earth, and they sell it in a tube so that it looks like toothpaste, and it comes out, you squirt it out the way you squirt out toothpaste. However, it doesn't soak up, it doesn't increase in volume. It's gritty against your teeth because it is some kind of earth. So don't expect the same thing from your natural toothpaste as you might get with your conventional toothpaste, is what I would say. So yeah, I would say make the switch if you can, but do it at a pace that feels comfortable to you. And maybe even try alternating, your regular toothpaste. So, if you brush your teeth in the morning and the evening, you could try one in the morning and one in the evening and see how that goes. In the evening, you might have more time to mix something up. Some people mix baking soda in coconut oil, and they might add a little bit of essential oil, like a peppermint essential oil or cinnamon essential oil, a drop or two, to give it a bit of flavor. And then they just use that on their teeth. And that works. But, if you're rushed in the morning, you're running off to work, you don't necessarily want to do that. So you could save that one for the evening, and then just go with your, or try to buy maybe an alternative toothpaste, like a more helpful one for the morning, and then in the evening try something like that. Okay, so I hope that answers the question. The next one, these are all over the place, but this is an interesting one. This is about food. And the question was, are red potatoes okay? What about red potatoes? How often is safe? So again, the reason red potatoes, and this is in my book, we include red potatoes as an okay food. And I had a long discussion with Andrea Nakayama, who contributed a chapter to the book and who also helped design the diet about this issue, because most Candida diets do not allow potatoes, and most Candida diets do not allow squashes, and they do often they don't allow beans and legumes either. So for us, it was a question of because the diet we wanted the diet to be plant-based, or at least I should say plant-based friendly. Andrea has a whole section on what meats to add and what animal products you can add. I just see a question there. Let me just finish this first. So in that case, we had a long discussion about this to talk about what's appropriate and what's going to work for people and not slow them down. And so the red skin potatoes have a lot less starch than the other potatoes, so they really are okay. I would say use them the same way you would use the squashes or any of the more starchy vegetables. Like, one serving. I wouldn't have them every day also. Myself, I would have them no more than once a week, let's say. So you want a little treat on the weekend, you want to make some oven fries or something like that, then the red skinned are great. So Katie's saying, I think I need to switch to the fast track or do a cleanse like Ultra Clear. Which do you recommend? So Katie, are you saying that you don't think you're getting results quickly enough? Because I think too, that's one of the problems that a lot of people have, is they're just not patient enough with it. And so I'll tell you, in my case, I had a very, very, very bad case of Candida when I started the diet back in 2009. And like, my naturopath was just amazed. It couldn't believe my symptoms wouldn't go away. I've talked about this many times, but rash from here, like all the way down to my groin. And I would say I was extremely diligent with the diet, the supplements. I was detoxing every day in a sauna. I was trying to do a heavy metal cleanse. And so I see that you're on week 3. And what I'll tell you is, and I'm not saying this to discourage you, I'm saying this actually to encourage you. I did not see any changes whatsoever until around month 3 or 4. I'm trying to remember if it was 3 or 4. Nothing. I thought nothing was happening. So, but then after I had done this for a long time, what started happening is I saw changes really dramatically over the next 3 or 4 months. And so, most of my healing happened within the first 8 months, I'd say. The thing about Candida, if you think about it, I mean, it took me 40 years to get there. Why did I expect it to go away in 4 weeks, right? So oftentimes it's developing and growing in the body, and we don't even know, because the symptoms, by the time you have symptoms on the outside of the body, by the time you have symptoms you can actually see and experience, it's already a huge problem. So unfortunately, that's just the way Candida works. It's like a stealth, a stealth enemy that then suddenly blossoms. So keeping that in mind, I mean, I don't know your personal situation. We can talk about that maybe in the Facebook group, or if you want to put a little more detail down. But, for each person, it's often a matter of years before they get to the point where they are aware that they have Candida. And so then, especially if you're using natural methods, which will have a more permanent effect ultimately, but will take longer to start taking effect. So if you're using natural methods and diet, it is going to take a little longer. But I guess take heart in the fact that you'll see more permanent changes. And so, yeah, so Lauren's saying she saw changes slightly within 1 month and more so in 2 to 3 months. It also depends how long you've had Candida. Like, I definitely believe I had Candida since the time I was a small child, if not from birth, honestly, because my mother was diabetic. She had type 2 diabetes. Excuse me. Sorry. Sorry about that. This cold. my mother had type 2 diabetes, and you know, so I probably ended up with candida in the womb, quite honestly. And then a lifetime of eating sweets and foods that were just not good for me, and poor, you know, surrounded by toxins, that kind of thing. So I had an accumulation over the years. So it took me a lot longer. I see your chiropractor said 2 to 4 weeks. Yeah, this is something that makes me insane. And I'm going to put a note up about this in the group. So this is a topic I'm going to be talking about with Jennifer Fugo of Gluten Free School. I don't know if any of you know her, but she runs a site called Gluten Free School, and she's doing a webinar and asked me to be her expert on Candida. So it's just going to be the two of us talking. And she offers these webinars every month, I think. There we are. Oh, sorry guys, I lost my chat there for a second. So I didn't put this in the group because I know you guys can ask me any questions you want anytime you want. But if you are particularly interested in learning more, and in learning more about why people don't get better, so that's really our main theme in this webinar. If anyone's interested in finding out more about it, what I'll do is I'll put the link to the sign up form in the Facebook group. So what she's got an early bird notification going on for another few days. And then after that, I think the actual webinar is on the 20th of October. So if anybody's interested, I guess the beauty of that is, again, it's going to be recorded, and then if you get the webinar, you can look at it anytime you want. But that particular topic about, you know, people saying that it's going to take you 2 to 4 weeks to heal, when really my feeling is, I've never met anybody who only took 2 to 4 weeks to heal, never. And I think the other thing that people don't tell you is that it's basically for life, unless you have an extremely mild form. So for instance, when I first was treated for Candida in 1999, I felt great afterwards. I thought, oh, I'm back to normal. And I went and I started eating back to normal. And of course, I had a huge flare up again. So I couldn't, if I had maintained that diet and lifestyle, at least, you know, 80-20, you know, do it 80% of the time, cheat, so-called cheat 20% of the time. At least if I had done that, I would say probably I would not have been dealing with it again in 2009. So it's kind of an ongoing maintenance too. So anyway, if anyone is interested in the webinar, let me know. And I'll just put a link up in the Facebook group. So I'm just going to check the questions one more time. 2 to 4 weeks seems insane. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to move on to the next questions, unless if you guys have any others, please put them in the chat box. Okay. So someone asked about intermittent fasting. I believe it might have been Zoe. So the question was, is intermittent fasting making my symptoms worse? So again, I mean, I can't say yes or no in that case. Every single person is different. So I'm not trying to evade the question. There are two things. One, I'm not qualified to say, but that is definitely something you want to look at with your practitioner, because there are all kinds of tests they can do. But the other thing is, each person's different. But what I find interesting about intermittent fasting, and I would say, so again, you want to gauge how your body responds to it. So you know, everyone's definition seems to be a little different. So, but from what I've read, intermittent fasting, you want to be sure that you wait at least 14 hours between meals, or between eating. So that means you might skip breakfast and go right from dinner to lunch the next day or something like that. So really, many of us, I don't know, if you've been in, you know, when I was in university, I was intermittent fasting all the time and didn't even realize it, because who had time to eat in the morning, right? But now I've been doing it a little bit more consciously, because you've probably all heard that supposedly there's this movement of people who eat fewer calories than their body needs. So and if anybody can remember the name of that movement, maybe you could type it in the chat box. But the idea is you deliberately eat only like 70% of the normal calories, and it's like a semi-starvation. And the idea is you will live a lot longer, because studies have shown that people who are slightly I won't say undernourished, because they want to have the right nutrition, but who are slightly underweight for their height live longer. So there's a whole group of people who are eating like massive salads and having to count every nutrient from every vegetable that they get to make sure they actually get enough nutrients, eating so few calories. It seems like a very sad life to me, to be honest. And they don't seem to be enjoying their food at all. That said, intermittent fasting is a little bit different, because you're you're doing it in a way where you don't necessarily feel that you're depriving yourself on a constant basis. And there's a process in the body called autophagy, I think that's how it's pronounced, where basically the cells, it's also known as cell suicide. And the idea is the cells will kill themselves as they work to clean up toxins. So a cell that's sick, or this process of autophagy will consume the sick cells, or that's how cancer cells get detected and eaten. Excuse me. So if you do intermittent fasting, apparently you can prompt that process in the body of cell suicide. And what happens is then the cells become kind of like scavengers looking for toxins, looking for bacteria, looking for viruses. And for many people, it works as kind of to enhance detoxification. For me, I find it has a strange effect on me because I'm not eating. You'd think I'd be hungrier, but in fact, I feel less hungry. So on days when I don't have on something, I've got to run out of the house and go somewhere, and I don't have time to have breakfast. If I defer my breakfast to, so I still have 3 meals, but I might just defer my breakfast to like 10. I find I'm a lot less hungry through the day. So for me, it works well. I would say the only reason you shouldn't try it at all is if you have blood sugar issues, and so if you have hypoglycemia or something like that, then you don't want to mess with fasting. But if there's no health reason why you can't try it, then I would say go ahead and try it if you're interested in it, and see what the result is. See how you feel. See if it prompts you to eat more or eat less, and then go from there. Excuse me. Okay. Oh, somebody's got. Is it your chiropractor, Katie? Wow. You see, your chiropractor is suggesting honey as well. Actually, some studies have shown that honey has antifungal properties. However, it's very high glycemic, so I definitely would not have it in the beginning of an anti-candida diet. So what works as an antifungal that doesn't interfere with medications was another question. There's only one that I know of. So most antifungals, especially if they're natural supplements, they're also going to be antibacterial, just general antimicrobial. So something like oil of oregano, pardon me, guys, I apologize. Oh dear. Okay, so something like oil of oregano is going to kill viruses, bacteria, fungi, everything like that, all at the same time. And so will something like golden seal, which is great for the anti-candida diet. However, it also kills bacteria. So it's just like taking an antibiotic. If you are killing the bad bacteria, you're also killing the good bacteria. And we all know that we need probiotics in our intestinal tract. So the only antifungal agent, which is also an antibiotic but does not kill the probiotic bacteria in your gut, is garlic, raw garlic. So eat as much garlic as you want, as often as you want, and frankly, who cares about people's negative reaction to the smell of garlic? I love garlic. To me, it's like perfume. So you know what? If you like garlic and you want to go ahead and eat it, I would say go ahead. And you can have it anytime, with food, without food. What I do, so for instance, right now, I've got this cold, which I haven't had, I got to tell you guys, I haven't had a cold in at least 3 years. I don't know what's going on. But in any case, so what I do often, like if I've got a sore throat, is I take a clove of garlic and I grate it really fine. It makes kind of like a paste. And I will add a teeny bit of olive oil just to make it more palatable. Put it on like a cracker or something and just eat it. So that is great for when you got a flu, when you got a virus, when you've got a sore throat, anything like that. You do it maybe 2-3 times a day. I also will often juice a garlic clove in with my green juice to try to get the allicin compounds, which are the things that are the antibiotics. So garlic is great. Other ones, really, I honestly can't think of any other antifungal that is, except, I mean, if you eat coconut oil, which is a food, but I'm thinking of like a supplement. I can't think of any other antifungal that does not require you to separate it from your probiotics so that you're not killing the probiotics directly. So if you're taking oil of oregano or grapefruit seed extract or caprylic acid or golden seal or berberine, can't think of any others off the top of my head. If you're taking any of those kinds of antifungals, try to wait at least an hour or two. I would say 2 is better in either direction, and then take your probiotics separately. So that way you're replenishing your probiotics, but you're not killing them with the antifungal. So Lauren is saying, do you think it's useful to take probiotics with an antifungal, or is it useless to take probiotics while? Yeah, that's another question that I talk about in my book. So a lot of practitioners will say, oh, look, while you're on antifungals, you're just killing everything. You don't need to replenish your probiotics. I actually disagree with that. I think it's good to take them at the same time. Now, it's true, you may not get the full benefit because some is going to be killed off. However, if you space them apart, and also some are going to get through. So I would look for a probiotic that has like 100,000 live cells, and maybe take that. I take it, my probiotic twice a day. So the other thing I do is I eat probiotic-rich food. So live sauerkraut, like lacto-fermented sauerkraut, which is either homemade or the kind that you get in the refrigerated section. I'll eat that. And again, you know what? I mean, apparently it has up to 100 times more probiotics than even the best supplement if you take the lacto-fermented sauerkraut. So in that case, I'm assuming some of it's going to get through and make it through. For me, it seems well worth it to take the probiotics. Okay, so I see another. How often do you do ACV between meals to get the same benefits if it's in your food salad dressing? That's Katie's question. So ACV, apple cider vinegar. So apple cider vinegar also is going to give you some probiotics. And what I do is I drink it. So I'm doing now what I'm calling, I think I called it my alkaline cider on a Periscope. But I drink it either hot or cold. I would think cold is better because I'm putting in baking soda. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to alkalize my body even more, because all of these critters, fungus, bacteria, germs, viruses, they all hate alkaline. So this is one way to quickly alkalize the body. And you can do it with food. You can, basically any vegetable is alkaline. Most fruits are alkaline. So if you're eating a really high plant diet, you are alkalizing the body. But what happens when you have candida is it really acidifies the body. So it takes it in the opposite direction and eats up a lot of the minerals that would alkalize the body, like your magnesium. So what you want to do is like almost over alkalize the body, at least in the beginning, to try to create more of a balance. So right now, because I'm dealing with a flare, I'm doing that. So what I'm doing is I mix up a half a teaspoon of just plain old baking soda, and I put it in the bottom of a glass, and then I add a tablespoon of raw apple cider vinegar. And it's like a chemistry experiment in grade school. It's going to fizz up and fizz and fizz and fizz. And then what I do is I make like an herbal tea in a fruit flavors, and I'll mix things together. So my batch is I'll boil up a bunch of water and I'll do 3 tea bags. I'll do 2 fruity ones, whatever I feel like that day, lemon and ginger, or blueberry and cranberry, or there's one passion fruit and lemon is a nice mix that I like. I just like mixing my flavors together. So I'll do 2 fruit tea bags, and I'll do 1 dandelion tea bag, because dandelion helps the liver, helps you detoxify. And when you mix it, and I don't mind the taste, but when you mix it in with the fruit, you totally don't taste it anyway. So I've got this fruity tea that I let cool down, and then I turn that into almost like a Kool-Aid drink. I pour my fruity tea into my soda and apple cider mix, and I add a little bit of stevia for sweetness, and I sip on that for over about an hour. And I do that twice a day on an empty stomach. So I try to do at least an hour away from food. And what that does is it really alkalizes the body. So if you guys are testing your pH with pH strips, is anybody testing pH? Then what you might find is you drink a drink like that, and an hour later you go to the bathroom and your urine is going to be very, very alkaline. So the idea is to try to maintain alkaline over a certain period of time until the candida is basically driven away, or at least diminished. So you can do that, and yes, absolutely, have it in your salad dressing, whatever else, wherever else you're willing to drink it. Absolutely, it's good anywhere. So you can use it in anything. So I do it twice a day. I know some people do it 3 times a day, and even 3 times a day. If you're very acidic, it should be okay. But again, I think that's the kind of thing you want to check with your naturopath, check with your doctor. What's a good level for you? What's too much for you? Because you can go too alkaline as well, and that can be dangerous too. Okay, so we're getting through here. What is my probiotic and fiber supplement of choice? So we talked a little bit about probiotics. Like I said, I think a probiotic should have a minimum of 100,000 live bacteria. Excuse me. I'm supposed to go like this, right? I'm old school. I go like this. And a couple of the brands that I like, there's Udi's, Udo's, I'm sorry, Udo's, it's called Flora. They have a really good one, and it has at least 100,000 in it. Then the Now brand, I really like them. I like Genestra, which I think you can only get from your practitioner, if I remember correctly. So Genestra is by a company called Soroil, and Genestra is one of their brands. And they have a really nice one called HMF Forte, and then they have HMF Replenish, and the Replenish is really pretty good one. So those would be some of my top picks. But the other thing that I would recommend with probiotics, excuse me, is try to switch up brands. And because that way, each brand has a different set of strains, and we actually don't know exactly which ones are the ones our body needs the most. Like this is still new science, so they haven't yet figured out. They know that lactobacillus is like the most common one, but they don't know of all the other strains what's a good amount, how often do they turn over. They're not 100% sure. So I want to cover my bases. I'm going to I buy like a bottle, I finish it, I go buy another bottle, I take that bottle, and I sort of rotate brands. And I figure that way I get a broader variety of probiotic strains. And hopefully that's better for my body. And that's also why I like to eat sauerkraut and I like to eat kimchi, because, or any naturally fermented veggies, if you make them yourself, because that way you're going to also get more probiotic strains. So for me, that's what I would recommend with probiotics. For fiber, I'm not sure if I don't know who asked that question. I think that might have been Zoe as well. But if you're online, whoever asked that question about the fiber, I'm not sure what you meant. Like, were you talking about a supplement? Because for fiber, pardon me again, I'm sorry, guys. I was trying to keep my throat lubricated there. For fiber, I think the best way to do it is just to eat high fiber food. So, leafy greens are great. Beans and legumes are great for fiber. Nuts and seeds are great for fiber. Avocado is actually really high fiber. If you're already able to have fruit, pear is the highest fiber. Fresh fruit, dried fruit is really high, but you can't have dried fruit. What else is high fiber? It's food. Leafy greens. So if you eat a lot of vegetables like cabbage, crucifers are high fiber, broccoli is high fiber. If you're eating a really high veggie diet and high legume diet, you should be okay with fiber. What I do, and I started this habit years ago when I was first diagnosed with IBS, which I've since found out is often a precursor to candida. So a lot of people who have IBS actually have candida and they don't realize it. So when I had IBS and I needed to take a lot of fiber because a lot of people get diarrhea when they have IBS. I was the opposite. So I started taking ground flax seeds, and now my husband calls it my green slime. I do this every morning. It's like a sludge mixture I make. So I grind up flax seeds. I take a tablespoon of ground flax. I take a tablespoon of whole chia seeds, and I take some spirulina, which is also great for detoxifying and for alkalizing. And then I just mix it with a little almond milk, and I make I guess it's kind of like a chia pudding with spirulina in it. But that's a pretty high fiber little pudding. And I just have those 2 spoons of seeds every morning, and that really works for me for regularity. And of course, I think I eat a pretty high fiber diet anyway, but that is sort of my additional boost. I think there's something like 9 grams of fiber in those 2 tablespoons. So, if you make a smoothie, throw some flax seeds in the morning, or have a chia pudding for dessert or for breakfast, and that's going to increase your fiber. And so I think those will work very, very well. If you're looking for something that isn't like sort of a whole food, psyllium husk is my favorite source of fiber that I add to foods. I use it in baking. I use it as a binder. But psyllium is great for anybody with candida because psyllium is not only soluble and insoluble fiber, it has both, but it sort of acts as like a little brush that clears the intestines. So it's a good detoxifier as well. And so I would use psyllium also. I'm not sure if that's what you were asking in your question, or if you were talking about like supplements that you can take, but those are my suggestions about fiber. So Lauren is asking me about the FODMAP diet. I am familiar with it and I have looked at it, but I'm not really familiar. Like I know what it is, but I couldn't tell you all the foods you can and can't have on it. And I know that for some people it's very, very useful. I'm sure there's overlap between FODMAP and the ACD, but I don't know if there are any foods on FODMAP that you can't have on ACD. So I'd have to take a closer look, and I could let you know if there are certain foods on FODMAP that would not be acceptable on the anti-candida diet. Because if mushrooms are on there, or if grains that have gluten are on there, or dairy is on there, or eggs are on there, those are all no-nos on the anti-candida diet, or at least on the version that I follow. Oh yeah, this question I really liked actually, because I really literally just started doing this about a month ago. So someone asked me about bentonite clay and diatomaceous earth. I'm just curious, how many of you have tried it, or has anybody done either of those? So bentonite clay and diatomaceous earth are both detoxifiers, and they're both obviously dirt, clay/dirt. So bentonite clay is a natural clay that comes from volcanoes, if I remember correctly, and it's sort of like chia seeds in that it actually expands and absorbs liquid. So people take it as a detoxifying agent because both diatomaceous earth and bentonite clay apparently have a negative charge, which then attracts toxins, because many toxins have a positive charge. So it's almost like a magnet for toxins that then, as it moves through your body and through the digestive tract, is going to draw those toxins out with it. So bentonite clay is a great detoxifier, and in fact, people can even take baths in it, and it draws toxins out through the skin. So you can eat it if you buy food grade, but you don't have to. You can use it on the outside of the body too. And apparently, it's really good for rashes. People use it on rashes, and it helps to calm the rash and to help them heal. So that's just for detoxification. Diatomaceous earth is it's microscopic fossils of these creatures that apparently under the microscope look like shards or like diamonds or shards of glass, very, very sharp edges, but they're so microscopic that they don't harm the human body. And so apparently my friend who does gardening, like she's used it for years in her garden to kill bugs, because those little sharp edges apparently cut up the carapace or the skin of the different bugs, and that's how they kill them, and that's how they prevent them from infesting their garden. So now you can get food grade diatomaceous earth, and they both just look like the clay and the diatomaceous earth. They both just look like a really fine flour, almost like a cornstarch texture of powder, except they're gray. And so both of them you mix with water and then you drink them. And what the diatomaceous earth does apparently is kill parasites, and if you have worms, and apparently many of us do and don't realize it. Excuse me, sorry. Pardon me, guys. I'll just take another sip. Okay. Um, so with the diatomaceous earth, the beauty of diatomaceous earth for someone with candida, especially someone like me, who's had it for many years and is still dealing with flare-ups. And so that's the question we always ask is, why is it not going away? And so what they've discovered in recent years is this whole concept, which they knew about, but they didn't necessarily associate with candida, called a biofilm. And so a biofilm in the body is kind of like, I think of it almost like a mucous membrane coating. So it's like this supposedly gooey, gluey coating that covers the cells. And so what happens with candida, and you probably know this already, but you know, candida comes in two forms. So there's the yeast form, which is pretty benign, which is what's in our body all the time. And then there's the fungal form, which grows root-like extensions that clasp onto your digestive tract and can poke through it and cause leaky gut. And that's the really dangerous form. And what happens is once it embeds itself like that, this biofilm can grow over the fungus, and it can actually have like whole communities of cells. It's like, you know, a protective dome for, you know, I think of those science fiction movies where they have people living in a dome on other planets, you know, and they're all enclosed. So you have your candida and some bacteria and some viruses and all kinds of things enclosed in this protective dome. And the problem with that is your immune system then doesn't know they're in there, because the dome, the actual biofilm, is your own cells, cellular material. So it's not recognized as an invader. The invaders are living safely within it. So in recent years, and in fact, this came out even after my book was published, in recent years, candida protocols have all had to include what they call biofilm disruptors, or ways to break down the biofilm. I've lost you guys again here. Let me just refresh my page, my chat box. So you need something that's going to break open that biofilm in order to expose the candida within, and then the antifungals can kill the candida, and then your immune system can go and find it and kill the candida. And that's one of the reasons why they think that long-term antifungals sometimes stop working, because you get to a certain point where all that's left are these biofilms and the antifungals can't penetrate them. So you have to break it open first. So in my case, and the thing is, the biofilms, you develop more of them and they become thicker and stronger the longer you deal with candida. So in my case, where I had candida going on for like, honestly, like 40 years before I even tried to address it, I probably have a lot of biofilms, and they're long standing and they're very thick. And so they're going to take a lot of breaking down. So the beauty of diatomaceous earth is apparently it helps to crack open those biofilms. And that's why when you start taking diatomaceous earth, you might initially have a really strong die-off reaction or a detox reaction. In other words, you're going to feel a lot worse before you feel better. So you might get a flare-up of symptoms, like a really bad flare of symptoms, and then that dies down after a while. So I'm all for it if it's something that's safe for you to do. Again, that's the kind of thing you want to check with your doctor first. Bentonite clay, diatomaceous earth. I've read two different things about how safe it is long term. So some experts say that you should not do it more than once a year for like maybe a month at a time. Once you've done your month that year, you can't do the diatomaceous earth for another year. And I believe that's connected to the fact that it's pulling things out of the body, not only toxins, but also mineral stores. So you might be depleting your mineral stores. Although from what I've also read, bentonite clay has a lot of minerals in it. So other people say they've been on diatomaceous earth for years. So again, it's just a matter of you got to do your research, you got to speak to your own practitioner and see what they say, and then go from there. But certainly to try it, if you don't have health issues and you're interested in that, and you feel like you have a really resistant case of candida, I mean, that's why I took it. And you know, it's true that anything you read will say it doesn't taste bad. It almost has no taste at all. But yet somehow I still gag every morning when I have to drink it. And then it's, you know, I realize this doesn't taste bad, but there's something about drinking a glass of dirt water. I don't know. Anyway, so that's my feeling about diatomaceous earth. So I see another question here. Also, do you know if dandelion tea is good for the anti-candida diet? Yeah, absolutely. Dandelion tea is great. The root is better for liver support, but the leaves are good too. The leaves are good, I think, more for kidneys. So I get a root and leaf tea, and then I drink that. I try to drink it almost every day. Really good for supporting your organs of detoxification. Dandelion is great. All right, we got a few more here. Zoe asked, should I try eating breakfast? Yes. Okay. Why not? I mean, in a word, yes. There's no reason not to eat breakfast unless for some you have a health issue that would mean you really shouldn't. But I'm a big proponent of breakfast. I do think it's one of the most important meals of the day, one of the three most important meals of the day. I believe in having, breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, if you can. Okay, so another question somebody asked me was, what essential oils would I recommend for yeast infections treatment, maintenance, and prophylaxis? So I am definitely not an essential oil expert, but I will say that this month's interview is with someone who is an essential oil expert. Her name is Jane Schweitzer, and she works with doTERRA, which is one of the two big essential oil companies you might have heard of recently. The other one's Young Living. So in our interview, I'm going to ask her all about essential oils and how best to use them for Candida. I'm going to try to get those interviews to be live as well as we continue with the month by month. But this month, unfortunately, Jane could not do it live. So we're going to tape that one in advance. But if you do have specific questions for her, then please let me know. You can either put them right here, under the video, or you can put them on the Facebook group, and I'll be sure to get her to answer them in our interview. And that should be posted in another week or so. So essential oils, my understanding, excuse me, my understanding is that the best one for Candida is tea tree oil. However, you cannot consume tea tree oil orally. And then clove oil is supposed to be very good for Candida, and citrus oil, so like lemon oil or orange oil. But again, I will ask Jane and see what she has to say. Okay. Now there was a question on cravings, which I think could precipitate a really long answer. But basically the question is, I read that if you eat something and it triggers cravings, you should avoid it. Well, this is you, Katie, right? Is this because the cravings indicate the yeast have been reactivated, or the association with a food we used to eat might make it harder to stay on the diet? So it could actually be both. I think cravings are caused by like such a myriad of possible reasons, but in the course I teach with Andrea Nakayama, it's called You're Not the Boss of Me, and it's all about controlling blood sugar. And so we have a whole section on cravings. And so what can happen with cravings is it may have nothing to do with your willpower or the food you love to eat. It may be completely connected to hormonal imbalances, insulin, dopamine, serotonin, and your body is just saying, I want to rebalance those. So you might end up having the craving. And in a case like that, it has more to do with, are you keeping your blood sugar balanced or not? I find, because my thing is sweets, I find that I tend to crave more if I have a sweet breakfast. So I love pancakes. If I start my day with pancakes, sometimes what happens is I end up having cravings. Sorry. And if I start my day with a savory breakfast, like I do the Toronto sandwich that I love so much, or I might just have like leftover stew from last night, or even a salad on some days. If I start my day with a savory breakfast, I'm almost never struck with cravings later on in the day. So it has to do with blood sugar balances and eating something that's going to last you as long as it can before you eat again. The other trick that you can use in that case is always be sure to have a fat, a fiber, and a protein at every meal or snack or anytime you put food in your mouth. So when I have my pancakes, I'm always sure to have like some nut butter or something on them, so I'm getting good healthy fat. Normally they've got some pretty good fiber, and then I would add protein. So I make sure that I use protein powder in them, or nuts and seeds are good too. So that helps to mitigate the effects of any kind of blood sugar ebbs and flows. Savory for me often works better because I'm going to have beans in there, which are the fiber and the protein. So that's one thing to do. Or even if you have a snack, be sure that you keep your blood sugar balanced. The other major source of cravings that in my experience, is emotional. So if you have some sort of habitual response to particular emotions, then that's going to trigger cravings oftentimes. So if I'm really upset, if I have argument with my husband or something, my first impulse is to go and eat something sweet for comfort. And so I have to catch myself and realize, and sometimes I say, I don't care, I'm eating it anyway, and I'll go make myself, I don't know, some emergency fudge or whatever, from my cookbook. But other times I'll stop myself and I'll say, I don't really want that cookie, truffle, whatever, ice cream, whatever it is. What I really want is to go make up with my husband. So in those cases, then cravings are not connected to candida. Those cravings are completely connected to emotional habits. And I think for those of us who, at least, in my case, those of us who have a history of binge eating or a history of getting into cravings, oftentimes it's a combination of the physical and the emotional. All right. I don't see any other. I'm just going to refresh the page and make sure I'm not missing any other questions. So I have 2 more questions on my list here from the Facebook group. So I'll go through those, and then I'll see if anybody has any others. And I think I'm fading fast. So once we get those done, I think unless there's anything else that you guys have right now, we can call it a night for that. So is SIBO, S-I-B-O, the same as Candida? And I think it was Lauren who asked about that. Maybe you can clarify if you're still online, because I wasn't quite sure what you were asking. If you meant, are they the same condition? Again, I don't know a lot about SIBO. It's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So this is when bacteria that are supposed to be in the colon back up into the small intestine, and they can cause all kinds of symptoms: bloating, pain, other kinds of problems. And the name alone, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, tells you it's not the same as candida, because candida is a fungus and bacteria are bacteria. So, my understanding is that oftentimes people have both. So in a case like that, from what I understand, the treatment for SIBO is antibiotics. And so if you're going to be taking antibiotics, you obviously have to be very careful to also take antifungals so that you're not exacerbating your candida. And I think there are protocols where you can do both. But again, as I said, that's not something that I have experience with at all. That would be something definitely to ask your practitioner. Okay, and then the last thing is, can you tell the difference between a food sensitivity and lingering candida symptoms? So again, I'm not 100% sure what you meant by that. Oh, I've already answered the question. Okay. But Laura, if that's Lauren also, by lingering candida symptoms, do you mean like just symptoms that aren't going away? Because oftentimes people who have food sensitivities have them because of candida. So I said earlier that often candida, and they really do pretty much all the time go hand in hand, candida and leaky gut, because candida tends to cause leaky gut. And once you have leaky gut, I talk about this in the Candida Kickstart. Leaky gut, I think of the if you think of the intestinal tract as like a fishnet stocking. So it's this long tube that has tiny little holes all over it. And those holes are gauged and sized perfectly to allow only the things that are supposed to go through into the bloodstream to go through. So when your protein breaks down to amino acids, or your fats break down to fatty acids, or your sugar breaks down to glucose, those molecules are the only ones that are supposed to pass through the intestine into the bloodstream. So if you think of that fishnet, it's those little holes that are letting them go through perfectly. Well, then you get this candida that's grabbing into these holes and ripping them open, and you have these much larger spaces where you're not supposed to allow larger size molecules to go through. So you end up, that's what leaky gut is. It's when there are these little micro tears and food that is not completely digested. It's not completely broken down to that single amino acid or that single molecule of glucose. It's slightly bigger. It's getting through because there are now holes that are in the wrong size. And once you get something like that into the bloodstream, your immune system is going to go on high alert and say, whoa, invader, attack, 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 attack. So then you get things like allergic reactions and inflammation and all the symptoms of food sensitivities because your body sees it as an antigen or something it needs to attack. So people with leaky gut end up having food sensitivities sort of out of the blue, even though they've been eating a food for ages. Suddenly they seem to be sensitive to it, and it's because these particles are getting through undigested. And if you heal the leaky gut, that doesn't happen anymore, and then you won't be sensitive to those foods anymore. So again, I can't say this for sure, but that situation where someone has ongoing food sensitivities and ongoing candida, to my mind, what that says is they haven't healed their leaky gut yet. And so you're still dealing with candida because you still have leaky gut, which is why you're also still dealing with food sensitivities. Now, some people, once they have a food sensitivity, it never goes away. But for many, many people, once they heal their leaky gut, all the food sensitivities disappear, unless it's like a true allergy, which is not the same thing. But a food sensitivity is usually a delayed reaction. So, yeah, it can take a year and a half to heal leaky gut when you're very diligent about it. But then you might start seeing improvement at that point. All right, I'm going to answer. There's one more question from Katie. What protein powder do you use? I tend to alternate between, I would say 3. I use Sun Warrior. I like theirs, a raw protein, and I really like Growing Naturals as well. And they both have a good rice protein, and they both have a good grain-free protein. There's a Warrior blend, I think, has pea protein and cranberry protein. So they're all really good. I use, most of the time I use the unflavored one, and I just mix it up myself and stuff. And I like the unflavored one too, because then I can use it in savory applications, like in the pizza crust if I feel like it. And then the third one I use is called Nutribiotic, I believe. And it's just a very plain, basic rice protein powder. And again, I keep that one on hand for things like pancakes or pizza crust or something like that. Because sometimes I can use the Sun Warrior or the Growing Naturals, but they're raw. And I think, well, I'm going to get the best benefit by having them raw, like in a smoothie or something. If I'm baking with them, I'm kind of defeating the purpose of having it be raw because it's no longer raw. So I keep the Nutribiotic for that kind of purpose. All right. What is good to heal leaky gut? Yes, aloe vera juice. Yeah, so sure. Excuse me. The basic leaky gut protocol is the same as the Candida protocol. Like there's nothing in the anti-Candida protocol that is bad for leaky gut, I will say. Because leaky gut, what you're doing is almost the same thing. You're eliminating the allergens, the top 8 allergens, the foods that people would be most sensitive to, processed foods, sugar, caffeine, all the things that basically are bad for you and that you need to take away for the anti-Candida diet anyway. So if you're on an anti-Candida diet long enough, you are going to probably heal your leaky gut. But yes, aloe vera juice is great. The other thing that's really good is L-glutamine. And there are supplements you can take that have these things in them. Coconut oil is really good. Let me take a look at, I'll take a closer look at the protocol for leaky gut and see what supplements you might want to add for that. Because in terms of eating, your food, if you're on an anti-Candida diet, is already okay. But apart from the L-glutamine, there's a really good powder that I used to take by Advanced Naturals called Intestinal Therapy. So I will put that information on the Facebook group for you guys. Yeah, and then that's something you could do as well. Okay, so any last questions before we say good night? I'm at 8:59. Like, is that good timing or what? Any other questions? There's a slight delay, so I'm going to wait and see if anything shows up on the chat box. And thank you so much for coming out tonight. This was great to kind of see you guys. I see your names and your comments coming up, and I'm really glad you were able to make it. And for future Q&As, if there are specific themes or topics or anything specific you want me to talk about, I'm happy to do that too. And any questions that come up before the talk. So let me know if you've got specific things you're interested in. I'm lining up people for interviews. I've got interviews lined up through the new year, but beyond that, we're pretty open for topics, and I'm always looking for new topics. So if there's something that interests you that you'd like me to talk about, please let me know. Thanks, Katie. Yeah, I'm going to go drink some tea now. Okay, guys, have a great night, and thanks again. We'll see you on the Facebook group. Bye.